thank you, Dr. Burrell, for the very kind words of introduction. I can't believe it's been almost 6 years since we started the NSF NRT USD N3 programs. We have seen a lot of graduate students go through these workshops, and these workshops have provided guidance towards their long-term career goals. So greetings, faculty and students from WKU and USD, and welcome to the myIDP workshop, or my individual development workshop. I'll share my screen in a moment, and here it is. So as Dr. Burrell had pointed out, the myIDP plan is a tool that was developed several years ago, primarily for biomedical scientists, and it has now is widely used for STEM graduate programs. STEM standing for science, technology, engineering, and math. So I'll try to during the next few minutes take you through what this myIDP is, and just highlight the salient features. Dr. Shugart, who is with us and is the graduate program coordinator in the mathematics department at WKU, has found it very useful and has incorporated this into the Math MS graduate seminar program. And I've had the privilege of interacting with graduate students in the math department at WKU. And so this is a great work tool to help provide guidance to graduate students regarding their career path. So this slide gives you some data, some historical data about science, engineering, and health graduate students who have gone on to tenured and tenure track appointments in academic institutions 3 to 5 years after completion of their PhD programs. So if we look at the longitudinal trend across any disciplines, what is the number of
Hello. Yes, I need to have my student ID. Where I need to go?
Oh, it'll be your second floor. Let me go check the room.
So the percentages of individuals who are in academia have declined, which means that we really need to think of what are the pathways for students who are pursuing a PhD. And there are jobs outside of academia as well, plenty of them, as the percentages indicated in this slide. So here is a slide that is blank for now, and I asked for feedback from students, and you may please post your comments in the chat feature. And I just want to get a perspective of what your understanding is for jobs for either master's students and PhD students. So if you could take a couple of minutes and list science, technology, engineering, and math jobs that are available for master's and PhD students, and the type of industry that they will work in, I would deeply appreciate. So I'll pause here for a couple of minutes, and I will await some comments in the chat feature just to get a sense of what jobs or what understanding of jobs you have for individuals with PhD and MS. So you could write a research chemist in industry, you could write in publishing, etc. So please do provide some feedback. In the chat feature, you should be able to do so. So faculty are also welcome to.
I am a student, my ID.
So I do have some comments here from Coyote. For biologists, research scientists, scientific officer, quality control officer, these are job titles. You may also put locations. It could be a pharmaceutical industry, a drug industry, A chemist, we have a Blessing Ishola, talk about a process chemist, a job out there. Muhammad Zulfikar Haider is going to write about mathematics. We have Blessing talking about pharmaceutical industry, a data scientist. Please also think about locations, academia, national labs, industry. So please do be thinking of job titles and job locations. Data science, data analytics, biostatistician from Sheikh Ibn Abir from WKU, great. We'll wait for another minute or so to get feedback. Academics, 50%, industry, 50% is what Coyote has provided. But location, great. So I'll wait for a few more seconds. I'll start sharing my screen meanwhile. So I'm going to put job positions here. So you can look at the diversity of jobs that are available for STEM graduate students. You could work in funding agencies. You could work as a scientific illustrator. You could be a consultant. You could work in operations research, institutional research, business development, technical writing, tech transfer, etc., library, venture capitalist. And here are additional job titles or job sectors. You could be an administrator like me. You could be a K-12 teacher, a community college. The point we are trying to tell in this slide is that there are a variety of options because graduate studies provide you with lifelong learning skills. They provide you with technical knowledge and skills above and beyond the baccalaureate degree where you learn the fundamentals in your disciplines. So please have an open mind about the job opportunities for you once you complete your master's and PhD students. And there are a variety of jobs and industries and sectors as the slide indicates. So the question comes, how do you find your right career? And for that, we have to be proactive and we have to plan. Fortunately, graduate students are assigned a program advisor. And if you are pursuing a thesis, you have a thesis advisor and a thesis committee or a dissertation committee. So the question comes, is there a structured pathway and a plan that will help you find your career? And so the structured plan is first to go through a self-assessment. You have to understand what your skills are, or the skills that you currently have, what skills you will need to find your dream job, what interests you. Would you like to work in academia, where transfer of knowledge, pursuit of knowledge per se is more valuable? Or perhaps you would like to be in industry where a combination of pursuit of new discoveries and making a little bit more money is of interest to you. And your values, what values do you stand for, are also important. We'll talk about skills, interests, and values, and those are at the core of the myIDP planning. Obviously, you'll need to research your options, and then you have to identify your career options. And for example, if you are interested in a certain career and you do not have the skills, you will need to build the skills during your graduate studies, either through internship opportunities or through coursework. And then you can make a career plan. And then as you are planning to graduate, you hone the skills, you improve upon the skills, and then you can apply for a suitable job so you remain competitive. So this is the planning that is involved. So coming back to the slide, we talked about the first bullet point, taking a self-assessment. So the question comes, how do we take a self-assessment? Well, it could be done informally. We could go to linkedin.com, we could go to indeed.com, we could browse journals, and we could look at what job postings are done, and we could get a sense of, well, for this position as a data scientist, this is what they're looking for. They would like the software, these coursework, etc. So those you can peruse or look through this list of skills and values and take courses and get credentials. Alternately, you can also reach out to your peers and mentors who are working in the discipline and ask them, how did they get their job? And they could be your mentors as well. So those are informal self-assessments that we encourage you to do. But there is a formal process, which is the individual development plan that I shall provide details in the next slides. So before you do the self-assessment and myIDP, you need to ask yourself, what energizes you? What do you want to work? As a chemist, we always talk about bench work. Do you really want to be in the lab, do work in the lab, or do you want to manage people, or do you want to do work that is simulation, theoretical, computational in nature? And what would that bring to you? Would you miss about being in a lab? And then the question is, where do you want to work? In what setting do you want to work? In a university, which many of us are passionate about, or do you want to work in an industry where the expectations are different? Do you want to work in a national lab where there is only research expectations with very minimal or no teaching? And so these are the questions you may want to ask yourself as you are thinking about starting your myIDP. Do you like to be very conservative and just do what you're doing now, or are you open to new areas and emerging disciplines? Do you like to work independently, or you get energy in working as a team when you bounce off ideas? And what are the kind of tasks and activities that you immerse yourself that you completely lose track? And this comes back to what energizes you. So this slide has this nice graphic of do what you love and love what you do. The Japanese call this finding your passion. They have a term called ikigai. Ikigai, loosely translated, it means passion, but it is something that drives you to get up from your bed each day. And to capture ikigai, it is a combination of your passion, your profession, and your vocation. So what is your ikigai? You'll need to find that through the myIDP process. So the myIDP plan is a highly structured planning tool where you can set short-term goals that will eventually scaffold into a long-term goal, but it calls upon you to constantly improve this by discussing your plans with your advisor and mentors. I know Dr. Burrow meets with his graduate students on a periodic basis and goes over the myIDP plan and makes corrections and course directions so that ultimately the student is successful and is able to reach their long-term goals. So you really need a team to help you with your planning of myIDP. So the myIDP was started several years ago, meant for biomedical scientists, as I had indicated. It's a free resource, and I have the hyperlink here. It helps you to identify your career goals and has a 4-step plan. And first, it asks you to evaluate your own skills. And if you want to go somewhere, you have to know where you are. And in this case, you have to know what your skills are and what your interests are. And we'll talk about values as well. Skills, interests, and value are at the core of starting the myIDP. And based on your skills, interests, and values, you will have the opportunities to evaluate career opportunities, and then you can identify your preferred career or careers. And then you set goals to prepare you, and then you discuss your skills, interests, values, and your goals with your primary mentor. So the link, myidp.sciencecareers.org, will lead you to starting your myIDP assessment. So I had indicated that it's a structured planning tool. And so you start with an assessment of your skills, interests, and values that will lead to exploration of career goals. You set goals, and then you plan by working with your primary advisor and a mentoring team that could be your friends and outside of your thesis or dissertation committee. So let's look at the assessment component, because this is at the heart of the myIDP. As I said before in the previous slide, the assessment tool has 3 components, and I'll walk you through these 3 components during the course of the next few minutes. Skills, interest, and value. That's what you have to remember. Skills. Idea is to identify the skills and knowledge areas that you have and what potential weaknesses you have. The interests are to identify tasks that you love to do, and that is going to be the core element of your career. Ideally, you would like to work in an environment and in a position that is aligned with your skills, interests, and values. And then comes values. What are the core principles that define you? What is important to you, and what outcomes are you anticipating? So this is what the assessment tools lead you to. So let us look at some screenshot of myIDP. So if you log into myidp.sciencecareers.org, you will be able to set up a free username and a password. And the finger on the left is what you will see when you log into myIDP. It'll give you an overview summary. You have to add your personal information, and then the assessment component is what you will complete first, namely the skills, interests, and values. And based on the assessment piece provided by you, the myIDP will offer you some careers that are aligned with your skills, interests, and values as a rough start. So you can consider some careers and you can read about them, and it will provide you with opportunities for some conferences and provide networking opportunities so you can ultimately choose a career path. But you also need to set goals. And so there is that setting the goals component module in this myIDP, where you can list what goals, skills that you would like to achieve in a certain period of time, and what project goals you would like to achieve. And finally, there is an implementation. How would you go about in actually doing this stuff? And that is where the mentoring team will provide you guidance. How can you complete certain skills and certain projects in a finite amount of time? And then you'll get a summary at the end. So again, just to summarize, you'll do a self-assessment of skills, interests, and value. You'll be led into career options that will help you set goals, and you work with your mentoring team to implement a plan. And then you go back, and if some of your career plans have changed, you can go back and complete the self-assessment. So it is an iterative and continuous process. You do not just do it once and complete it. You do it constantly, and we ask you to do it at least every 6 months. So this way you are up to the tasks, and you can work with your mentoring team and pursue a career aligned with your skills, interests, and values. So the scientific skills, and like I said, this myIDP is meant for science, technology, engineering, and math students. And so obviously it is going to assess your scientific skills. What knowledge do you have of the broad area of science? What skill sets do you have? Increasingly, communication is very critical to success in any discipline. It will also ask you about your communication skills, your professionalism, management and leadership. Responsible conduct of research related to compliance is also important, especially for biomedical sciences, and then also career planning. So there are 7 components to the scientific skills assessment. And so I have a screenshot of these scientific skill assessments. So essentially, once you create an account and as you are prepared to do the skills assessment, it'll ask you some general questions. Do you have a broad knowledge of science? And I've taken a screenshot from a former student. And so it may be hard for you to say whether you're highly proficient or highly deficient. And so you could use your own judgment. And this student has chosen somewhere in the middle, is a graduate student. They do not have the broad knowledge or experience working in the discipline, and so chose to put a number of 3 somewhere in the middle between 1 and 5. Some have deep knowledge in their area, so you could put 4. If you're a new student who is just starting on a research project, you may put 1 or 2. So there is some subjectivity to the skills assessment, and so there is no wrong answer, if you will. So use your judgment and try to put a scale somewhere between 1 and 5. 1, from my perspective, is someone who is who's a junior level, has done an undergraduate research project. A graduate student typically should be in many of these scales, 2, 3, 4, and sometimes as high as 5, especially towards the later part of their graduate program. So this is how you will do your skills assessment. Again, there is no wrong answer. After 6 months or 1 year or 2 years, your knowledge in the discipline increases, you can go back and change the score from a 3 to a 4 or a 5. So this is a skills assessment. So then let us look at what does this myIDP show you based on your skills assessment. Here is a screenshot. It will tell you in which areas you're proficient. So that is shown on your extreme right, and areas you're highly deficient will be shown on the left. So again, it's going from a scale of 1 to 5, and this information is based on the score that you have given. And again, like I said, it may be hard at the very beginning to judge whether it's a 1 or a 2 or a 3 or a 4 or a 5, but use your discretion. 1 is something who's extremely new to science. 5 is someone who is a very seasoned faculty, so many of the graduate students would be between the 2 to 4, and some of you may have some unique skill sets where you're already highly proficient, as this student had completed her skills assessment. So this is the skills assessment component. So now let us look at the interests assessment component. Here it is your personality, it is your career options that you're interested. What values do you stand for? What is important to you? What outcomes are you expecting? And what do you deeply care about? I have been always fascinated by academia, and so I've had all my career in academia: a bachelor's degree, a master's, a graduate degree, PhD, postdoc, tenure track faculty and administration. Some of you may be open to new experiences. So there is a link here that talks about and expands upon the interest assessment. So this is the interest assessment. And the values assessment is linked to the interest assessment, and it asks or helps you identify things that you truly enjoy doing, things that you do not like to do, and it is really focused on the very elemental tasks that define you. And so I've taken a quote from myIDP, and this is very critical: a careful and detailed analysis of interest is at the core of the assessment phase. So as you are interested in doing a myIDP, we ask that you put some thought, time, and effort, especially with the values assessment, because the assessment will finally dictate the career options that are presented to you. You do not want to be rushed when you complete this assessment. And sometimes you may want to think over some of these questions over a couple of hours or overnight as well. And so we ask you to complete the assessment component over a period of days, if not even weeks, so that it better reflects the values that you stand for, the career goals that you aspire for, so that the options that are presented to you are truly reflective of your long-term career goals. And so the values assessment, I have taken a screenshot. I did not provide one for the interest assessment in the interest of time. So when you're doing this value assessment, you'll see these are very open-ended questions. Do you want to help society and contribute to the betterment of the world? Are you deeply interested in helping others? Are you interested in working as a team? Are you an extrovert? Are you a people person? Are you fiercely competitive? Are you fond of making decisions with authority? Do you like to work in an environment that is very frantic, very busy, dynamic? Do you like to supervise other people, etc.? And so the values assessment, we ask you to take some time before you provide your scores. And so once you complete the assessment component, skills, interests, and values in that order, the system will match you with career options based on the assessment that you complete. So it is very important that you take time and put thought into completing your assessment. So for example, based on this student's assessment, the career paths suggested are science policy as one potential option, an academic setting in a university or a liberal arts college, pursuing research, mentoring students, and also teaching students. And another path that was suggested is science writing. Or working in a journal for a publisher, etc. So you'll notice that the career fits are also multiple career fits are presented because there is an intersection of skills, interests, and values in multiple career paths. So this is just a sample for one representative student that I have shown. So here is another screenshot that further provides more details about the career science policy. There are links there and some articles if you want to impact scientific policies, federal laws, etc. How do you go about it? What are the career options? You may work at a nonprofit, non-government organizations, NGOs, and so those articles are also provided in myIDP. So I've just taken the science policy as an example here. And then comes an opportunity for you to do the planning part. You've done the skills, interests, and values. For example, for this student, 3 career paths were laid out. How do you go about in lobbying for this career path? And so this student has selected one path as a lobbyist to inform congressional members of science policies. And so that is one of the plans of this member. Another plan is also being a professor. And what experience would it require? For both these are also presented here. So you'll notice that diverse career paths are presented and there are options for planning as well that the students will input into the myIDP so that you can work with your mentors and plan for plan A here and plan B. So you choose a career path. And so the question then comes, how do we make a career plan? So we have seen the assessment tools of myIDP, and based on the assessment tools, we know that myIDP presents some career path, and it asks you to plan your career. So the question comes, how do we plan or make a career? So clearly we need to identify career options that sound interesting to an individual. To get to that career plan, we have to know what skills we have. We also need to know what skills are needed for that dream job. And so we need to build those skills or hone those skills to build your resume or CV to become a viable and competitive candidate for that particular career plan or path. So clearly, you need to know what skills you have, what skills you need, and clearly, each of us will need some skills to build upon. So the question comes, how do we build these skills? So there are a variety of options. The easiest is coursework. If something is already embedded into your graduate program or is available as a course in the university, that could be an option for you to consider. Alternately, you can acquire what is called micro credentials. You can get small, you can complete a small course, not an entire semester long course, and you can acquire those micro credentials. They are not a degree, but they are a set of course or a course that will give you some credentials. You could go and attend workshops, webinars, conferences, etc., and acquire skills over a period of time. You could volunteer to work in a committee. Let's say you want to build leadership skills. You could participate in some student groups. For example, many graduate schools or universities have graduate and professional student associations or organizations. There is student government associations, so you could work and volunteer and build leadership skills. You could pursue internships outside of academia and get some career skills. You could volunteer to work in the community. You could pursue fellowships, etc., to augment and learn new things that you do not do in a university setting. So here, there are a number of ways you can build your skills. So how do we get started? Just again, a good recap. Assessment has skills, interests, values. Then you explore, you review your assessment, you identify your career paths, you identify your gaps, and then you will plan to acquire your skills. So this way you can advance in your career, but you'll need also a mentoring team as part of your planning process, because the mentoring team will consist of peers who, faculty, or individuals in industry in leadership position that can guide you and help you hone your skills. And we talk about, when we set goals, we talk about something called SMART, S-M-A-R-T. When you set goals, we ask that you be very specific. It should be measurable. That is, after a period of time, you should go back and know that whether your goals have been achieved or they have not been achieved. It should be action-oriented, meaning that you really have to do something to acquire a skill. It has to be realistic. You need to, you're doing this on top of your graduate programs and classes and thesis. And so you need to be very pragmatic or realistic, and you need to be time-bound. For example, let's say we have a master's student and they want to get into a competitive PhD program. You have a 2-year window to complete your PhD. You need to acquire some skills to get into a good PhD program. So you're already bound by time. So you need to set goals that are highly, very specific, can be measured, so you know that whether a goal has been achieved or not. It should not be ambiguous. It has to be action-oriented and pragmatic as well. So this is what we typically ask goals to be. We had talked about a mentoring team, and so there are a couple of slides. This is the first, very simple, that has been adapted from Boston University. And this is something that I like because it is a good icebreaker in one way between the mentor and the mentee. So this slide and the following slide is something that I strongly encourage a student, a mentee, and a faculty, a mentor, to think about just as a starting point. A mentee or a student should have completed the myIDP and should make a list, 3 to 5 bullet points of what skills do they have. And then they go to the second quadrant, the upper right, and write what career options interest them and what are they passionate about. Because your mentor should know what skills you have, what is your passion, what options. And then you'll notice that there may be a gap between 1 and 2. You want to be something, but you do not have the skill sets. So that is where you have to make note of what skills you would need. And the fourth is professional development. What opportunities are available to me is something very important as well, so that you can build the desired skills. So the mentee can complete this very quick and easy bullet points pertaining to these 4 points. So this will provide the mentor with information as to what kind of mentorship, resources, tools, knowledge the faculty should provide so that the desired skills and career aspirations of the student are met. For the mentor, the faculty has to know what skill sets the mentee has, and it may not be readily evident just from the group meetings or observing the student in a laboratory setting. And the faculty have to ask questions. How can they support the mentee? What is the mentee passionate about? And the question that the mentor will ask himself or herself is, how can I help my mentee, and what resources can I provide? What resources are available in my college or school? What resources are available in my professional discipline, in my scientific association? What opportunities are the graduate school providing, or the institution or university providing? So this is truly a partnership, a team between mentor and mentee. The mentors could also be outside of your thesis or dissertation committee. Someone who is already in the field may help you provide internship opportunities and can provide you with up-to-date knowledge about the skills necessary for an individual to get their long-term goals. Here are some resources. I have drawn a lot of these resources from myidp.sciencecareers.org. The American Chemical Society, ACS, has provided its own IDP for chemical engineers and chemists, and it is called chemidp.acs.org, and it is tailored highly for chemists and chemical engineers. There are several other links that actually also have rich resources and knowledge that will help an individual with career goals. This is a snapshot from a survey that we did with the graduate students at the University of South Dakota. And we had done, during the course of the past 6 years, conducted a lot of workshops for the professional development of students. And so the survey had indicated the myIDP workshop was an extremely important resource. And again, you'll see that the faculty is also involved. One of the comments was that the advisor and the student will meet every other week to discuss the myIDP. And that is truly something really that we encourage you to do. Go back to your advisor and do an assessment, I would say 6 months, and meet with the advisor and to see how your long-term career goals are being met. And I think this is the final slide here, and I will stop sharing my screen, and I will be delighted to take questions, comments, and suggestions from the students. Thank you very much.
That was an attractive shot of WKU's campus, it looked like at night. So any questions from the group?
So feel free to, we have about at least 15 minutes. So this is an opportunity for students to ask questions. And I'll share, I've started recording this Zoom session, and we will upload it to the YouTube channel of WKU Graduate School. We'll share it with graduate program coordinators and faculty at WKU and with the graduate students as well.
And you can ask questions in the chat if you don't want to turn on your mic too, so.
So quiet group today. Dr. Burrell, do you want to lead with some questions? And
Yeah, I was going to think
it's
of
the
a
sixth year we are doing this.
Yeah, right. So one thing that I was thinking about as you were going through some of this, and it's not explicitly in the myIDP literature that I'm aware of, but you might talk a little bit about informational interviews and what those are. They may be a new concept to some of the students and how useful they are.
Sure. I'm just waiting for a student comment from Blessing. Blessing, you may you can unmute your mic if you're feel free to, or you can type in your chat. So Dr. Burrell's question was about informational interviewing. And this is becoming increasingly quite common. It is basically an informal conversation with someone in an area working in a closely related area that is of interest to you. And it is an effective research tool. And so it is not a job interview. And the objective of this informational interview is not to find job openings, but it is to network with individuals who are in positions, who are experts in the discipline, and who are maybe in academia too, or in industry. And the purpose is to get firsthand, direct, relevant information about the practicalities of working in that industry or a particular field or a certain positions. For example, it could be, for example, an associate dean at an institution somewhere visiting with me during a conference and asking me, well, you know, I think I'm ready to be a graduate dean. Can you tell me how your typical day is? What do you love doing about your job? What are the challenges that you face? And so it could be as simple as that, a networking opportunity where you meet with an expert in the area who already is in that position that you're aspiring for, and that individual will provide you with guidance and with information about career paths sometimes you did not know exist, and will get some inside information or insider knowledge and tips about how to go about in applying for an administrative position and taking the next leap. So this has become fairly common these days, especially when you attend a conference where an individual will try to connect or network to get some inside information. And LinkedIn.com is a great networking tool to expand your network in a specific career field. So this informational interviewing has caught on these days, and is something that a lot of career centers and universities actually encourage. They bring in experts from outside, and they help meet with students and provide information as to how the environment or atmosphere is in their job setting. Blessing, did you want to write something? I just did not see any message from you yet. So did I cover, Dr. Burrell, as to what you were?
I think the only thing also that I would add is that, you know, it's a little maybe daunting for some people to sort of cold call somebody and ask for an interview. But part of the concept behind this is also is that you ask many and you get back a few, basically, and the few are people that can potentially be useful to you.
Absolutely. So here is a question. How accurate has the career assessment predictions from myIDP has shown to be? Dr. Burrell, do you want to talk about some experiences? And we talked about it a little bit, right, with some of your students,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, you know, if said like a true scientist, so if you mean, you know, accuracy in that people definitely landed on something and that was exactly what they wanted to be, that's a hard question to answer. I think one of at least some of our experiences with this have been that people thought they wanted to do something, and then when they went through the process of you know, assessing what their interest and their skills were, and then when they did some things that looked into you know, some of the directions that Dr. Kudali talked about that you need to, or activities you need to do to investigate those fields, they found that maybe it wasn't for them. And so it's a continuous process. It's not like it's a ballistic trajectory that you start on and you're trying to hit the target. It's something that you're going to be changing a lot as you go through. And so it's a tool to help you along more than something that nails you right in your dream job, you know, 100% of the time. And hopefully that addresses your question, Alicia.
Yeah. Alicia, it's just to build on what Burrell had said, I had seen that firsthand with at least one of the students. So as part of this NSF grant, I would visit with all the students who are supported by this grant at least once a year, if not twice a year. And we would ask them if they had completed their myIDP. And so one of the students, as Dr. Burrell pointed out, had said at the very beginning of her PhD program, I do not want to be a professor like my dissertation advisor. He works long hours in the lab and I don't want to be Professor X. But remarkably, after 1 year, this individual found passion in being in academia and said, well, you know, I really, after taking the assessment, I truly now know what values I stand for, what interests I have, and it seems that I want to do teaching and research, and what better job than in being in academia. So that clarity came to the student after completing the myIDP. And so sometimes some of the job descriptions may be very broad. For example, the student had options of working in a national lab because you could do research, you could potentially mentor students as well and guide thesis from other universities. And so some of the options laid out may be broad, but as you go back and do this quite often, as Dr. Burrell suggested, you truly will understand your passion, and it provides that clarity and directionality to individuals. And that would be my response, Alicia. Great question. Any other comments, questions in the chat? Blessing, I don't know if you had meant to write something. You had just indicated, dear Dr. Kudali. So we still have about 5 minutes or so. Dr. Shuga, do you want to provide any perspective? This is the 3rd year in a row you're trying to implement this. Any feedback you got from the math MS students at WKU? It's muted.